Start
Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. Sorry about the technical issues, but thank you, Seaway, for allowing me to make a few introductory comments this morning. And as you can see, I'm Stephen Ritchie, Director of ITS Irvine. I'm going to be joined by Professor Safour, Chair of Civil Engineering, who's going to be a discussant for today's event. Thank you for allowing me to join remotely. I'm about 500 miles away from ITS at the moment, so I appreciate this opportunity to be with you by Zoom. So I'm really excited to welcome you all to this, our first undergraduate transportation research showcase. As most of you know, ITS Irvine initiated the Transportation Undergraduate Research Assistant Program this past summer with a number of undergraduate students, some of our brightest students, to participate in mentored research with some of our faculty associates in ITS. And so in addition to receiving a certificate of completion, these students have had an opportunity and continue to have an opportunity to engage in research activities with our faculty and graduate student teams, and I hope really gain a better understanding of the transportation field, the careers that are available, and pathways for pursuing those careers. So let me just say that in addition to our faculty mentors and co-sponsors who provided funding and support for this program, special thanks go to our ITS Graduate Student Association and to ITS Assistant Director for Programs and Engagement, Dr. Vicky de Guzman. So let me say a few words about ITS, as perhaps not all of you are familiar with the Institute. We're really the intellectual headquarters for transportation interdisciplinary research and education at UCI, and we have about 25 faculty from across the whole campus who participate in our activities. Pre-pandemic, 50 plus graduate students, probably about 40 right at the moment, and we see those levels returning over time to where they were. And so we also have a number of full-time researchers, and we host visitors from overseas, both graduate students actually, who are maybe completing their degrees overseas and come for extended visits, as well as faculty researchers and colleagues on sabbatical. So in broad terms, the research that we conduct is really within the field of what one might call transformational mobility science. And so this has a number of facets, including things like connected automated vehicles and shared mobility systems, big data, new mobility analytics paradigms, in general decarbonization of transportation and green design of mobility systems, and of course, policy engagement and workforce development for new mobility solutions. So that's a pretty broad portfolio of research. And of course, we're all really excited about what we're working on. We hope that our undergraduates have gained and shared some of that excitement with the projects that they've been working on. So, okay, I think it's now time to introduce the stars of today's event. Could you go to the next slide, Jared or Shiwei? Actually, not that one, the one with our undergraduate students. Yeah, thank you. So participating today, I think I'm going to end up leaving someone out because I've only got 4 names on my slide, but I do have Dylan, Joseph, Jingnan, and Langting, and I can't see the 5th name, but in any event, I would like each of you that are present to perhaps just say a few words to the whole group, just who you are, your major, your year, your hometown, and your career goals. And maybe we could start with Dylan.
in the second year of youth organizing, and I'm studying urban studies. So I guess this program has been very helpful for me for like kind of honing in my career goals on like transportation and stuff. And that's definitely something I want to pursue in the future. So yeah, thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Josie. I'm a student here. I'm studying civil engineering with a specialization in transportation and a minor in management. Right now, I'm interning for the city of Anaheim within the traffic management center, and I'm getting some good experience with traffic, but this project really allowed me to expand on my knowledge of traffic and overall complete streets and transportation infrastructure in itself. Thank you.
Everyone, my name is majoring in civil engineering, with specialization in calibration, and I'm trying to pursue in the transportation in future. Like I'm planning for graduate school now, so yeah, that's all for me.
Hello everyone, my name is Justin. I'm the person who is not on the other slide. I'm a fourth-year urban studies major with a specialization in GIS, and I've kind of always had an interest in public transportation, so I'm really grateful for this opportunity to be able to explore and analyzing a program in real life. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Mike. I'm a fourth-year public health sciences student whose experience helped me expand my research interest and helped me solidify my interest in wanting to learn more about the transportation system and how it impacts community health and public health.
Thanks, everyone. Look forward to the presentations. I think I'll hand it back to Jared and Siwei right now.
Yeah, would you like to stay there?
Yeah, just to discuss it.
Good, super.
Okay.
All right, well, I'd like to personally welcome all of you. I'd like to, in particular, thank our students, our faculty who have made this possible. Dr. Ritchie, who joins us from far, made a heroic effort to be here. And Dr. Sapor, who not only made this program possible, but has agreed to generously agree to be our discussant today. So he'll be interacting with you presenters and with the audience to sort of engage you in the research and then have some good questions for the students. I'd like to thank Justin in particular, who made a heroic effort to get his research done for today's event. And just got things put together at the last minute, and that's why he was just added to the presentation slide. So we're going to go in the rough order of the slide that you saw, the rough order of the slide that you saw with the students, and we're going to start with Dylan.
Yeah.
What should I stand over?
Let me start sharing the screen.
Okay. That's the mic. So
Yeah.
I guess
Sure, I think you need to share again.
Why?
From this screen.
It's sharing. It's sharing this way.
Yeah, it should the one before playing mode.
Ready?
Yes.
It's showing up.
Oh, it's showing up.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah. Okay. This is your.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. Hello, I'm Dylan Ando, and I worked under Professor Jay and his graduate student Megan for this research project. I'll let the name kind of speak for itself because it's kind of a mouthful, but yeah. To get started, I'm sure not everyone here is familiar with what TNTs are, and especially why you would form partnerships with them. Well, actually, you probably are familiar with them because you most likely know them as Uber or Lyft. But to put a definition to it, they are online or app-based services that connect riders to private drivers for on-demand transit. The reason why transit agencies want to partner is to increase public perception, increase mobility, and lower costs. In the last 15 years or so, there's been a national trend of declining transit ridership. And as a result, agencies want to partner with these to help remedy some of these fallings. One of the main benefits is first and last mile connections, which are basically the last end of a trip or the start of a trip to some sort of transit center or stop. In addition, there are also unproductive services that especially include low density suburban areas that, as a result, sometimes lack fixed route transportation in the first place. So this is an area where TNCs can enter and fill gaps in service. So for some background, generally, TNCs negatively impact public transportation and traffic congestion. And from an intuitive sense, higher income households may forego public transits for TNCs because of the added benefit of on-demand usage and the comfort of a private driver by yourself. In addition, they impact traffic congestion, as 50% of TNC trips replace transit, walking, cycling, or otherwise would not have been made in the first place, adding more cars to the street and thus more congestion. So, when it comes to, as mentioned earlier, transit usage can actually be increased through first and last mile connections in some cases. While generally transit usership goes down when TNCs are implemented, studies have found that in some cases there has been actually a 3% increase in commuter rail because of because of TNCs on their own without partnerships. There's also been the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has drastically decreased transit ridership even lower. And there are particular groups of interest, as in low-income transportation disadvantaged people and people of color who rely on public transit the most. These groups, however, face issues when using TNCs, as there is sometimes a lack of access to smartphones, the internet, and credit cards, which are integral to using these services. When it comes to accessibility and paratransit services, transit agencies are required to provide services to people who are disabled or need them, and these services come at a cost. TNCs provide an on-demand option for these people, and especially with partnerships with transit agencies, they can gain more access, more flexibility, and greater convenience for travel. Moving on to our first partnership, we are looking at OCTA's SC rides, with SC being San Clemente. So how it worked is that it replaced 2 eliminated bus routes with subsidized Lyft and Butterfly services within 1/4 mile of the original route at an illuminated bus stop. How it worked payment-wise is that there's a flat $2 fare that's subsidized for an additional $9 for $11 in total, with 120 trips per month. If you exceed the $11, you have to pay out of your own pocket by that point. From the outside, with its goals in mind, the program did its job well. It reduced cost of running the program so that it was feasible to continue transit services in the area, and it maintained the same level of service with the added benefit of on-demand convenience. As you can see, from its first full year, trips started at 20,000, but increased to 60,000 until the pandemic happened. So it was very popular. However, there are some inherent flaws from replacing fixed route, as it fails to reduce congestion or promote shared rides. How the system works is that with a Lyft partnership, you have an optional model to take private rides with just yourself or shared rides. But in this area, they don't really offer the shared ride option. So what ends up happening is you get a lot more individual cars on the street and not as much shared rides. So looking at our next partnership, there is the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority down in Florida. They had 2 programs actually, Direct Connect and TD Late Shift. Direct Connect worked by providing on-demand service to bus stops to promote ridership through Uber and Lyft. As you can see, it's actually been quite successful at promoting transit ridership, as during the program, over 2 years, the program increased ridership by 22,000 over the general network. They also had an explicit effort to promote first and last mile connections, as they specifically placed their stops away from potential final destinations, so that people would hopefully go to these stops and transfer to the bus network rather than using it as a quick way to get like to the supermarket or something instead. How the payment system worked is they had $5 vouchers in addition to the fare of the bus trip waived if used when connecting. As a result, 49.02% of respondents transferred, and this is in part due to the idea with the low voucher cost is that it would encourage short trips rather than longer trips. There's also a strong ease of user experience with around 70% of users stating that they found the service easy to use. However, there are issues with partnering with Uber and Lyft, as again, the optional model lets people choose choose their choices. They often go the single rider route. And there are issues with dynamic pricing and increasing costs. So for example, when there's a surge, prices are way more than the $5 fare can cover, and it leads to it being more of a luxury service and it being comped on the rider themselves. When it comes to TD Late Shift, this is a much more innovative program, and it provides services after fixed route bus lines stop running for verified transportation disadvantaged riders. The main benefit of this is that it provides greater access to jobs. And specifically how it works is that there's a $9 per month fare with 25 free trips per month. It, however, falls under budgetary constraint. Like by itself, it's a great program, but there simply isn't enough money to provide enough trips for people and a great enough service hours. So people often feel unsatisfied despite the added benefits. It's simply not enough for the most dedicated users of this program. Moving on to some smaller pilot programs, these ones were less successful than the previous one. So starting with Pierce Transit's pilot program, their goal was providing first and last mile connection through service zones, and others being providing community college students free trips to their homes late at night. And as you can see, over 1.5 years, it provided 8,800 trips to 330 users, which actually isn't that great. While it was cost effective, it fell under common trappings, mainly marketing failures, as people simply did not know about this program, which is common among some of the smaller pilot programs, and difficulties establishing partnerships over data. So originally, Pierce Transit was going to partner with Uber, but they had to partner with Lyft over data sharing agreements. This is actually a common problem among a lot of these partnerships, as it regards like information about the riders themselves. As a result, the transit agency wasn't even able to really evaluate the program simply because they didn't have information on the riders. Capital Metro is another pilot program, and they provided first and last mile connections in service zones to 1 of 2 bus stops for limited services. They also had data sharing issues, so they partnered with Ride Austin, which is a non-profit TNC provider, because they complied by data sharing requirements. One of the main issues with this service is that it only provided first and last mile trips and also marketing. As you can see, they had an average of only 37 TNC trips compared to a later pilot program that used service zones where you could travel anywhere in or within, which had 597 interzonal trips per month. It's a big jump, but they're kind of different. They have different goals. I think one of the main findings from this is the idea of spillover from having these interzonal TNC partnerships, as ridership will be much higher due to the attractive benefits of fully on-demand service. Moving on to King County Metros, which is up in Seattle's Via to Transit partnership. So Via to Transit provides first and last mile connections in service zones where one end of a trip is at a designated transit station, work, or school hub. It was actually pretty successful with 950 riders per weekday, with 20% of those trips, interestingly enough, being made by youth. Compared to Cap Metro, they did a good job of providing more options and where those first and last mile connections can go. Demographically wise, the service had a strong emphasis on diversity, as evident by the 66% of residents that are Black, Indigenous, or other people of color, 58% report not owning a private vehicle, and 57% report earning less than $45,000 a year. an evaluative study of the program found that it was accessible, but failed to increase transit ridership for low-income riders. Right. Instead, found that trips increased between 55,000 to 125,000 annual income, which is kind of counterintuitive to the goals of the program. There's additionally an underrepresentation of POC riders, as another survey found that 50%, there were 58% riders were white, while the surface zones only consisted of 32% of that demographic. Okay, yeah. It was successful though, as it produced good ridership numbers. So there's also LA Metro's Metro Micro. This was LA Metro's own on-demand shared ride service that provide accessibility in areas where public transit is not easily available around rail stations. While it prioritized first and last mile connection, it also targeted the 50% of short solo trips made within 1 to 5 miles. The main finding from this partnership is the benefit of running your own on-demand service with the help of like TNC technology providers, in this case, Rideco. In this case, they're able to hire their own unionized employees, provide its own vehicles, have less volatile costs, and greater security and data collection. I'll skip the last point for the sake of time, but moving on to the last partnership, we have the DART, or Dallas Area Rapid Transit's GoLink, GoPass, and DART Zoom services. So GoLink is a microtransit service in the Dallas area, supplemented by TNCs, providing first and last mile connections, supporting existing fixed route networks, and providing services in new areas. How it worked is that it had a $2.5 fare anywhere within zones, reduced fares for transit, free transfers when connecting. In addition, the use of a TNC partner as supplementation for microtransit was found to reduce wait times from a 10 to 5-minute average as an innovative way of partnering. In addition, there's GoPass, which was an app-based service that just provided first and last mile connection and also established data agreements between the TNC agencies. In addition, the main centerpiece of this program has been the DART Zoom effort by DART. It's basically a new bus network that heavily prioritizes quality of service over coverage through replacing less productive routes with GoLink zones. As you'll see here, it's kind of hard to see, but the yellowish blobs, those are GoLink zones, and they actually make a substantial amount of this network. And it's quite an ambitious program, as it heavily relied on these zones in order to be effective. In fact, there's 30 zones in total. So they had a ridership coverage ratio from 55% to 45% originally, but they switched that to 75% ridership to 25% and 70 to 30%. As a result, there was up to 15-minute service frequency during peak hours for the most frequented buses. They were able to expand late night hours for those buses. However, there was increased walking distances to stop, but the main benefit of this program, of the switch, was the idea of potential for growth, which, as mentioned earlier, there's been declining national transit ridership. They struggle with bus driver shortages, but we'll mention that later. And one of the main findings is that TNCs and microtransits can play a pivotal role in transit network as they reduce costs, maintain and even increase coverage in this case, and allow focus on ridership experience. One of the main questions that's here is, can people who rely on public transit the most actually use GoLink services? As mentioned earlier, there's issues with accessibility with smartphones, the internet, and banking. So that's kind of the real question when it comes to like relying on such a drastic change. And it's whether or not people can actually have the access to use these services. Most partnerships provide calling options, wheelchair accessible vehicles, and allow the use of transit cards or even cash payments. But oftentimes there's still an underrepresentation as seen through via transit. So real quick, this is just a graph of how the service has been going. GoLink has increased in popularity by a lot. Buses kind of fallen, but that's mainly due to seasonal factors and whatnot, and the bus operator shortage. This is just kind of like a summary of all the services I went over, but I kind of had to skip that. But moving on to conclusions. Overall, transit agencies and TNC partnerships can be effective. There's a strong emphasis on cost effectiveness, increasing access in first and last mile connections, and improving user experience. However, it's important to note that there are varying strategies and effectiveness when it comes to first and last mile connections. As you may have saw, the different programs had different strategies and some worked better than others. In general, microtransit is good in large metropolitan areas where they can be supported. However, they are more costly than normal TNC partnerships, but they provide greater benefits when evaluating and forming contracts. There are also common difficulties in partnerships, such as accessibility for low-income and minority populations, reducing congestions because some programs fall short on this, and in general, marketing, as these are new services that are kind of a first for many people. So yeah, thank you. That was the presentation.
Thank you so much. As Dylan can tell you, it's exciting to make the research. I was sort of pushing him along a little bit. I know he has a lot more to share with you. I'd like to invite Professor Sizemore to. And I'd like to let you know there is one student in particular who was Dylan's advisor before, and he's here also to share questions. Should there be room.
Perfect. So first of all, thank you for a nice overview of partnerships between TNCs and transit. So I have a few questions for you. You alluded to that at some point. How would you summarize the benefit of these different partnerships for different types of transit? Right? It seems that bus transportation and rail are different by these partnerships. Is that what you saw when you went through these case studies?
Yeah, I'd say for the most part, that was actually what was found. I guess from an intuitive sense, it's when you're having a first and last mile connection to a train station through like Uber or like a TNC provider, you'll be going there and using public transit as after you arrive at your destination through the rail. Comparing that to like bus stops, where it's a little bit more time consuming to transfer there and continue using just bus routes for the rest of the journey.
Okay, thank you. So you were talking about cost effectiveness. It's not very clear to me that it's actually cost effective to subsidize TNCs, which are intrinsically more expensive for people to take the bus. So what can we learn from the case studies you looked at?
Okay.
Are they saying it's not the case?
So what most case studies found is that in most cases, TNCs are cheaper than the most unproductive routes. So the unproductive routes are around like $30 to subsidize for one rider, but comparing it to TNC, it's around $10 to run. So the reason why it's so much cheaper is that because the unproductive routes don't have enough riders to really be efficient and whatnot.
But does it make sense? So you're talking like $10 a ride, right? So to go from A to B in one day, right? So is it sustainable from a financial point of view for the public?
For the public?
Yeah, because I mean, the money is coming from taxes, right? That are sent to transit agencies.
Yeah, it can be sustainable. It really depends on the circumstances.
Okay.
Because as you might saw, like some partnerships were less effective than others, but in certain cases where there's like unproductive routes and with the greater idea of like equity in mind, where of course there's always going to be a cost, but you can increase coverage and whatnot for these services, it's still going to cost something, but it's cheaper than running, let's say, a fixed route transit there. So in comparison, it's cheaper, but it's always going to come at a cost.
Okay. I can ask one more question, or does someone else have a question?
Okay. Thank you for that presentation. I'm doing a major update. So how would you evaluate the idea of approaching the external contact from the successful one? So very much. Which I think which ones should be implemented in other areas?
Which one should be implemented in other areas? Well, personally, I mean, it all depends on the transit agency's goals and what their goals and like what their area is like, because certain partnerships rely on more high density areas and more users, while others are more aimed for low density or not as much riders. Personally, I liked Via to Transit, the Seattle partnership, where they had service zones where you could connect to workstations or work transit hubs and education areas, as I thought that was an effective way to get people to be using shared rides and reducing congestion in general. However, that may not work in every case. Most of these studies, they're aimed for like their cities. I think it's a lot of it's a case-by-case basis, but there's kind of like common findings in them. I think they're applicable in like low density suburban areas, for example, around cities, if there's enough ridership. And another metric that that's important is employment density, as that indicates where people can transfer and if there's actually going to be a demand for that service in that area.
We're okay if you don't want to make sure you're
Okay, I'm good.
super. Thank you so much, everyone. See, wait, is there a question in the chat?
Just comments.
Yeah, let me see.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Joseph, right now.
Yeah, actually, if you guys, while he's setting up the slides, those of you who didn't get a chance to grab food, feel free to grab lunch. I know lunch came in a little bit late. I'd say if you're okay, if you don't mind, you'll get a little bit more time if you.
For sure.
If you're a lunch speaker as well. So, feel free to start whenever you're ready. And everyone back here, I suggested that the speaker could go ahead and speak a little bit, so we just want to quietly get them.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joseph Faria-Poynter, and today I'm going to be discussing with you the composition of complete streets and moreover the improvements of infrastructure within Orange County. A little bit on myself, you guys have already heard. My name is Joseph. I'm a fourth year civil engineering major here, specializing in transportation and minoring in management. I'm from Alameda, California, up in the Bay Area. Currently, I'm also a traffic engineering intern at the city of Anaheim, and I'm the president of UCI's ITE chapter. Some interests of mine include transit, signal operations and management, and complete streets, which somewhat encapsulates the first two. But what are complete streets? Complete street design is essentially a design and planning format for transportation infrastructure, which is intended to essentially put at ease the travel for all users and all types of transportation, from bikes to pedestrians to personal vehicles to transit. And we have an image representing this. As we can see, there's some sidewalks over here, wide sidewalks for pedestrian use. We have isolated bike lanes. This is actually a class 4 bike lane, which is divided from the roadway. And then we have a specialized transit lane. Furthermore, some components of complete streets include traffic calming in order to slow the speed of vehicles nearby, as well as pedestrian safety, micromobility access for bicycles and scooters, and transit utilization. And I'll talk more about these later on. So within my own research, I've begun my own process based on some nonprofit organizations research, specifically those from Not Just Bikes and Strong Towns, and their videos and their research that they've completed in the past. Furthermore, as I was both in Orange County and the Bay Area over the summer, I was able to go out, do some field study, get my own information, do some of that research myself, as well as Market Street and Go, which I thought was a great example of complete street infrastructure. On top of this, I was able to utilize public documentation and a bunch of resources that are found online, published by various cities, counties, and even some different countries that I was able to look at, specifically the Netherlands and Switzerland. Switzerland is well known for its incredible transit network, and as many of you guys know, the Netherlands and specifically Amsterdam is known as one of the most bikeable cities in the world. So focusing on Orange County, Orange County's infrastructure and complete street infrastructure is lacking in a lot of ways. And I found Orange County to be extremely car-centric, and a lot of the cities, specifically Irvine, Orange, and Anaheim, have a lot of really wide intersections with high speeds and some limited micro-mobility infrastructure and decent transit at best. And likely due to this, the traffic collision and death rates in Orange County are typically higher than other areas, specifically compared to San Francisco and Toronto, which have more complete street infrastructure than Orange County. And to touch more on the car centrism in Orange County, I've included two images to represent this. On the left, we have the El Toro interchange in Irvine, which connects the I-405 and I-5 intersections. And on the right side, we have an intersection in Orange at Catella and Tustin. And I feel like both of these are really good examples of how focused Orange County transportation is on personal vehicle travel. As we can see, these really intricate freeway systems all for personal vehicle travel, as well as these really wide intersections. And we can see there's a crosswalk, but there's not a huge amount of bikeable infrastructure or pedestrian oriented infrastructure in either scenario. And furthermore, to look upon the death counts and the traffic collision rates, I want to turn your focus to this bottom image at first, and we can see Orange County is right here, and this map or this image represents the amount of fatal collisions per 100,000 residents across all California's counties. If we compare Orange County with about 5.58 fatal collisions per 100,000 residents, we can see it's about double that of San Francisco County towards the bottom. And I wanted to look at two more statistics also. The city of Toronto in Canada houses over 6 million people, compared to Orange County's less than 4 million. Yet the city of Toronto saw over 100 less traffic related fatalities than all of Orange County. Aside from this, San Francisco has over 100,000 more residents than Anaheim and Irvine combined. Yet in 2018, Anaheim and Irvine did total more fatal traffic collisions than San Francisco did, with about 60% of them being pedestrians. In order for Orange County to improve upon this and develop complete street infrastructure, their next steps are to first update their existing infrastructure. And doing this, we need to, first of all, implement some traffic calming measures and design for multimodal equity. And on top of this, implementing new infrastructure is just as important, if not more important. And some methods of doing this are as follows. Traffic calming is a great way to slow down traffic and improve safety for bikes, pedestrians, and essentially everybody else on the road. Some typical methods of traffic calming include speed bumps, as well as chicane roads, which are essentially just curved roads, as well as roundabouts. Furthermore, pedestrian-oriented infrastructure is incredibly useful, and we have an image of this right here. Two main examples of pedestrian-oriented infrastructure are, as we can see here, this is mid-block pedestrian refuge island. And similarly, something else that could be beneficial are continuous sidewalks for pedestrians to get the right of way instead of vehicle travel. In addition to this, micromobility oriented infrastructure is just as important. And by this, I'm specifically referring to bike lanes. And in the Bay Area, we see a lot of class 4 bike lanes, and class 4 bike lanes are those that are separated from streets and roadways, be it by a physical barrier or by simple vehicle parking. And this just makes it a lot safer for bikes to travel. On top of this, transit is another big method of improvement that Orange County can adopt. First of all, transit signal prioritization is something huge that we don't really utilize a huge amount in the US. In Amsterdam, transit signal prioritization is used, and it essentially gives priority to buses and and light rail and transit, essentially at any intersection where they may intersect with personal vehicle traffic. And actually in the US, a similar technological method is used for preemption for emergency vehicles, essentially. So every time an emergency vehicle approaches an intersection, this preemption device detects its infrared rays and gives it the right of way at the intersection. If we decided to use this exact same technology for transit and buses and trains and anything like that, it would make it much more optimal for transit users, and they would get priority. Transit would be much more efficient, and people would get to and from where they need to go faster. And finally, rapid transit, any sort of rapid transit system in Orange County would be incredibly useful. And especially going back to the comparison of the Bay Area rapid transit, BART is incredibly useful, and it helps commuters, students, and essentially everybody just get to and from where they need to go faster. Orange County, as you know, has primarily two modes of public transit, being OCTA, the bus system, and Metrolink. Essentially, they're good systems. They're definitely, they're designed well, they run well, but they're not extremely fast, and they don't really get people to and from where they need to go as optimally as they could. That's essentially it for my research. I wanted to give a brief overview on my own experiences and my decision on researching complete street infrastructure. My initial reasoning for choosing complete street infrastructure and focusing on Orange County is because as I've lived in the Bay Area for the first 18 years of my life, transit and transportation has always been relatively easy. But as soon as I came to Orange County, it just became kind of more noticeable that it was more difficult to get around and that you essentially had to have a car. And that made me decide that I wanted to look more into this and see why this was. And it came to me that a lot of it was the infrastructure and complete street design and how equitable this transportation engineering was in both areas. Furthermore, from my experiences, it became significantly inherent how much room for improvement not only Orange County has, but how much room for improvement the entire country of the United States has compared to other areas such as, like I said, Switzerland or the Netherlands, where public transit, bikeability, and pedestrian travel is much more focused on, whereas in Orange County and a lot of places within the US, personal car travel is usually the main area of focus for transportation engineers. I also wanted to end with a quote by Gustavo Petro, who's the president of Colombia. The quote says, "A developed country isn't a place where the poor have cars, it's where the rich use public transportation." And I feel like this is a great example for Orange County to kind of take this into consideration, and feel like it would be incredibly beneficial for all people, transportation engineers, students, and professionals, once we kind of switch our focus from personal vehicle travel to multimodal travel. I have a little bit more information for anyone interested. Here are my references. I want to give a quick thank you to the Institute of Transportation Studies here, everybody here, and to my faculty advisor, Professor Jin. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Professor.
So very quickly, Joseph, thank you for a nice presentation on complete streets. I agree that in Netherlands to replace especially complete streets. Don't want to forget about Denmark, especially Copenhagen, which is arguably the place in Europe where people use their bikes and also between everything. Oh, okay, so I have a few questions for you. So I think safety, I mean, the focus on safety was great. You may want to talk about, right, the reason why we have so many problems and so many severe accidents here compared to otherwise similar areas. And I thought we made great comparisons. Was key, right? We have Jamboree. Jamboree is like a freeway there. It has 6 lanes, I mean 3 on each side, in many parts, right? So one of the main goals of complete streets is to force vehicles to slow down, right? To take out the lane or to on each side, and make lanes narrower, make lanes bumpier, so you can do any drag racing or you're gonna. So I would emphasize speed. Another thing that really is important if you want people to change modes, in addition to all the behavioral aspect, is pricing, right? If you wanna talk, so you looked at a number of factors on the design side, but can you say something about what other conditions are necessary for complete streets to be adopted and to be a success?
Yeah.
Or for people to switch from their cars to other modes, right? Because if you are building this new infrastructure, you want people to take it, and it's not enough to just put it in place in this case.
Yeah.
So what else did you learn from looking at experience in other places? What else is important?
Yeah. Other things that are incredibly important, especially an example actually in the Bay Area, is one of the main issues with public transit, I feel like, is just the maintenance of it, and people don't really want to take it. There's not a huge amount of protection from like there's a lot of drugs and things like that on there, and
But in the Bay Area, one reason why people think twice about driving is that it's incredibly expensive to buy.
yeah,
So pricing is really important, right?
yeah. Pricing and a lot of it is just the planning and the zoning laws, or
Okay.
everything is often really spread out, and that makes it difficult to walk and bike too.
I agree. So the urban form also comes
Yeah.
into play, right?
It definitely does.
But if you look at smaller European countries where this works, is because they tax the hell out of car ownership.
Yeah.
Denmark, I mean, the tax on a car is like 80%. That means if you want to buy an $20,000 car, it's going to cost you 36. If I can count. So it's to be honest, thank you. So pricing really has a role to play, especially because we are used. The other thing is we need to change people's habits, right? Here we are used to jumping into our cars to go anywhere. So we have to, do you have one or two other measures you can think of? And I'm done for my, again, very nice presentation. It's great that you educated us a little bit more about complete streets, but what other necessary conditions do you see that are needed to make this a success?
Yeah, a lot of it, like you were mentioning with parking, for bicycles, it's often hard to find, like, say, bike paths as well as bicycle storage. I know there exists in the Netherlands and in a lot of other countries around there, that there's like old bicycle kind of parking garages essentially with much more bicycle storage, and like on UCI's campus, there's like maybe a couple racks per like building, and UCI is obviously much better than a lot of the surrounding area because it's a college campus, but it's just storage, accessibility, and then like you said, the pricing of everything, and just people are in the US especially are so in tune with just getting in their car, going and doing the most like easy. Yeah. We have time for another question.
Yes, thank you.
Did you say you interned at Anaheim?
Yeah, I'm currently at Anaheim.
So what's the traffic engineering group at Anaheim think of these streets?
Yeah.
I guess the other part of that is, right, who in the city of Anaheim or the city of Irvine can push forward and implement the complete street program?
Yeah, a lot of it, whenever it's mentioned, it's kind of this. The big focus is, do we have the budget? And often the answer is no. But I think it's something worth considering, and the principal engineers would probably like to, but I think it's usually just a thing of budget, from my understanding of it. And
so if the state were to have grant programs,
yeah, the increased grant programs would probably help. That definitely would help. But to my understanding, it's a lot of just, do we have the money? Maybe, maybe not.
it's not that there would be political pushback to take away land policy.
that it's potentially also, I think, yeah, I think that's not gonna. I think they might not. I think they might not admit that. That might be harder for them to admit, but
Yeah. It seems like Professor McNally also has a comment, but I guess my other question is that quote at the end, you know, I've been in transportation for 10 years, and it's the often used one and the inspiring one, but why can't it be both? Why can't we have a developed country with for people who can afford and use cars and rich people who follow the brand? I don't think the distinction is actually like I don't want both, not either or.
yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that, but I feel like just it's kind of the thing of it's the far extreme right now in vehicles, so we kind of just gotta pull it back and then it can kind of center out. But I definitely agree with you that both is completely optimal as people can do what they choose, and with better transit, then the roads become clearer. So like if people want to drive, they have less traffic and more ease of travel, but then also people can take transit or bike. It has to kind of go over to the other extreme a little bit and then kind of center out. That's a good one. I believe it was
You could just unmute and speak up.
Can I ask my question now?
Yes, Christian.
Okay, and you guys can hear me okay?
Yes, fantastic.
Well, first, a comment before my question. My comment is, I have a proposal that doesn't fit in at all with what was discussed in this presentation. But it gets back to the idea that there are multiple audiences that want to use a transportation system. And my proposal is for New York City, to take Broadway, which runs, more or less the length of Manhattan, and through strategic pruning of the infrastructure, put a 6-lane, 3-lane in each direction freeway right down the center of Broadway. So people that do want to drive their cars and do want to drive fast can do that without impacting the other streets in the area. Now, clearly I'm making this up and I'm not meaning that I really want to do that, but I see that as pretty much just as impossible as doing some of the opposite things in the other direction. Like take Irvine, for example. Irvine was designed, and you may not like the design, I personally don't, but I live here, to be the type of city it actually is. The street network, the type of housing, the hierarchy in the housing design and the hierarchy in the street designs are synced together. And pretty much the city works as a transportation system, as a housing system, exactly the way it was designed to work. It's really quite remarkable how that works. For example, it's almost impossible to find congestion anywhere in the city of Irvine. It just doesn't exist. Now you may sit there and say it makes it very difficult for people to walk. Well, actually there are wide sidewalks off, not right along the road, on most major arterials, I think all major arterials in Irvine. There are bike lanes on all major streets in Irvine, many off-road bikeways in Irvine, and it's designed for that, from that purpose. So we talk about Irvine as being, good, bad for many different reasons, but there's a transportation system in Irvine that was designed, and a housing system, everything else, and it works. Is it equitable? Is it optimal for everybody? No. Does every area have to be? Does every area have to be like San Francisco or New York City? And I think what comes down to is we always make comparisons, and those comparisons are between extremes. And I just wondered, does that really make sense? Can we compare Irvine and Anaheim with San Francisco? Because it's not even a question of, fundamental differences in terms of behavioral cultures, street patterns, public transit availability, everything. They're just fundamentally different worlds. So I want you to comment on that. But the last thing I'll mention too, by the way, is that Orange County is the second densest county in the state of California after San Francisco.
Yeah, I feel like I definitely agree that they are two extremes and it can be hard to compare them. I feel like the bigger idea, for me at least, was just to kind of begin shifting the focus a little bit into creating an area more like that, to allow it to be, maybe there aren't a huge amount of pockets of traffic in Irvine, but around Orange County there certainly are, on the highways and on 55 every day, on the 72 and everywhere around. And I feel like just incorporating a little bit more complete street infrastructure. Definitely not, I mean, obviously not going directly into just creating another bigger San Francisco here. That wouldn't make sense, but just developing some sort of an increased, more equitable infrastructure over here, I feel like would kind of better just everything and make it easier and less traffic dense on highways. And Anaheim especially is incredibly crowded. Orange, coming to school every day, it takes 40 minutes for me. I feel like just small steps, not necessarily, I agree that they're very different. And my point wasn't entirely to say we need to like create an entirely different area here, but just to make smaller steps in order to allow for the safer and more easily usable transportation network within Lang County.
All right, thanks for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Professor McNally. Dr. J, I saw you open your camera. Do you want to add some comments?
Well, yeah, I had left some comment in the chat, which was about, you know, one item at least that was mentioned, which is the pedestrian refuge idea, a refuge island in the middle. So rather than making them walk across 8 lanes, you know, bring them to the middle. Which actually is an idea that has a lot more benefits than people realize, and that is from the signal timing standpoint. And we could have a win-win solution if we could actually only use half the walking time within the signal timings, because right now the signals around the world are set so badly. I mean, it's you know, nobody talks about this, but the national productivity loss in places like Thailand or Indonesia or India and Korea and China is just incredible, because these signals are set with, you know, wide streets out there, and they're set for like 4-minute type of signal cycles, and the queuing just goes on and on, and it's completely inefficiently designed, and people don't even realize it, and almost always because pedestrians need to walk across, and of course we have to handle the pedestrians, but if we can just simply cut the pedestrian walk times that get into the signal designs to half. I did back of the envelope calculation. I was leaving some of these comments in a back and forth with Professor McNally just now. You know, I did some back of the envelope calculations and actually estimated that for Korea, you can save 1% of national GDP from better signal timings. You won't believe it, but this is the truth.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just leaving that as a comment out, that there are some win-win solutions out there where you know, the complete street, you know, pedestrian-friendly streets idea can actually help move the traffic along faster too.
Yeah,
okay.
That's actually what my research started with Professor Jin, was a discussion on these pedestrian refuge islands and like staggered crosswalks, but I completely agree with that, and they can be incredibly useful and stop the like pairing of one phase with the crosswalk to make it way too
exactly
long.
Yeah, you got my comment instantly. Thanks. and I think somebody should really do a master's or a PhD dissertation on this with appropriate data, and that will be very useful. Anyway, that's all I have. Great presentation. Thank you.
As Joseph mentioned, we started with one video regarding the Netherlands. They have this speed design so that pedestrian bicycles can stop in the middle of the road and wait for next phase. And I don't know. I'm very interested in you say the kind of theory behind it, and it looks like you already thought about it. We should have more discussions on this one. Yeah, this is really a timely topic, and Joseph, come to me with this.
And I'll very quickly add there, what really has happened is that the US academicians have taught signal timings and signal settings to the whole world. But we were actually talking about the conditions in the US where you don't have as many pedestrians at all. So the basic ideas that are written in even the signal control textbooks and everything are fairly unusable for world cities. And then that's not understood by people out there either, because if we don't tell them about the mistakes in what we have taught the world, they will never know.
Yeah, definitely I will include some of this discussion in my next quarter's class on signal design and so on. Yeah, so I think this will be really helpful. And theoretically, I mean, from a methodological point of view, there's also a lot of possibility. Great job.
Thank you for the so thank you all so much. I was just it's just exactly what we want from this program. We do have this thing, this clock issue. So what I thought, I'm going to suggest that we do is we have the Jingnan and Langting will be presenting their presentation. Justin, who made a heroic event to come in today, will be giving a practice session for those of you who can stay and be engaged with that session. We're going to put this session last. And then in the spring, we're going to give Justin the second chance to present. And I thank you all for allowing us to run out of time, and it's because of your engagement. So thank you so much for coming and all of your engagement. Don't stop engaging. We figured it out. All right, our next presentation.
Well, hello everyone. I'd like first thank the organizers of this seminar, Vicky, and thank you all for coming here today. No matter you are online or in person, I would like to talk about my summer research topic on network traffic flow. And before I start, it's not working. Which button? The red one?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not. Oh. Excuse me. Okay, so before I start our main topic, I'll introduce myself again. I'm Jingnan, and I'm a senior student majoring in civil and environmental engineering and specializing in transportation. I'm from China, and as an international student, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to participate in the ITS summer research program. And under the guidance from Professor Jing and his PhD student Shimon, they really helped me a lot during our research process. And I divide my presentation into 4 parts, which are research objective, and I'll provide an overview and an introduction to the Bathtub model and the Boston school bikes. And I'll provide some discussion of my research result and the possibilities of the future application on the Bathtub model. Okay, so for this research, we meant to validate the possibility of future application of the Bathtub model based on the characteristic of the model that I'll introduce in a later slide. 2 main advantages make the Bathtub model ideal for network traffic flow analysis. So compared to other traditional traffic models. In short, traditional traffic analysis requires a detailed layout of the network topology and origin destination demand, which are not necessarily needed for the Bathtub model, and which makes the traffic analysis first private preserved because we don't need that much detailed and information for individual users, and also computational efficient because it can provide like sufficient computation, like result in a very short data, like small data set. And about the Bathtub model is first introduced by William Vickery in 1991, and is a traffic flow model that view each road network as a single unit of roads with the same traffic condition. It provides a macroscopic view of traffic flow. As you can see in this figure, we have inflow, active flow, and outflow in both like Bathtub and the traffic flow system. And there is a two type of Bathtub model, which first is the Vickrey's and another is a general form of Bathtub model. And the equations are shown in the slide, and the variables are, I'll introduce them like among our my result session. And also why we choose blue bikes in Boston as our research object, because Blue Bike is a bicycle sharing system in Boston area, because it has its own app. So it's provide a data set of individual trips for us to analysis. Also, the Blue Bike trip network has a clear boundary, which is a very important point for a network traffic flow when we want to analyze. Blue Bikes provides a complete data set for us to compare to the private car trips. What do you mean by complete means that it can provide a sufficient data set that includes this network we focus on, as all the bike trips will be recorded and stored in like the app and the cloud, the storage cloud. Moving to the research result, the data need to pre-processed because the raw data only contains the start time and stop time and the trip duration for each trip. And there are two major pieces of information are missing, which are trip distance and the average speed for each trip. So I use harvesting formula to calculate the approximate shortest trip distance. And after the trip distance is calculated, and the average speed can be derived from the given trip duration. Okay, so this figure shows the relationship between the remaining trip distance and the time. On January 1st, 2015, in a unified relative space dimension, as we don't need the specific origin and destination of each trip, so we can unify this in a like only the distance and time given. So the original data, set contains the trip generated in the entire month. In order to make it easier for us to get data for certain date and time period, I sorted data by the trip date, since the harvesting formula is not able to calculate the approximate distance for the trips that has start and stop time, stop station at the same like bike station, like they have same latitudinal and longitudinal information, and will result in a zero distance trip distance. So all the zero distance trips will be sorted out to avoid further errors in the later analysis. And I generate a histogram between distance intervals with their correlated number of trips based on the original data set and test. We set every 0.3 miles as the distance interval to ensure that the number of trips is properly distributed. So the main point of this histogram is to check the trend of trip distribution, which will further help us to check which Bathtub model that I mentioned in a earlier slide, which one to use. And as shown in the figure, the trend of the trip distance distribution did not follow a negative exponential and time independent trend, and it's more likely to be a log normal distribution. So I use KS test to test whether it is the log normal distribution, and the result of the KS test shows that the p-value is greater than 0.05, and it's confirmed our assumption. And based on the graphically and the analytically analysis, so the result shows that we need to use the generalized form of Bathtub model. in order to validate the conservation equation in total trips, which is the total number of the active trips is equal to the number of the trips at time 0 and plus the total number of the entering trips minus the trips that exist in the system. Those Bathtub variables are needed, so I generated, and the result is plotted on the graph. So, and also there is a time total miles traveled information that we needed for the analysis. Since all trips were assumed to have constant speed, I used linear regression to determine the trip distance at every time step. Then the trip distance corresponding to the entering trips were summed and shown as the red line. And all the trips distance corresponding to the active trips were summed and shown as the blue line. So as we have the most of the Bathtub variables needed, we can come up with the Bathtub solution in my continual research. After all research was done, we are able to address the limitation of it and along with the possibility of future research. So that's all for my presentation.
Thank you, Jingnan, for a nice presentation about the Bathtub model. I have a question for you. So, as you know, there is a broad range of models, right? And you use different models to answer different questions. Or... Okay, so what, based on what you learned during your time in this program, what are the main advantages of the Bathtub model? Like, for what type of questions would you use it versus a microscopic model where you track individual users? What kind of question can you answer with a Bathtub model? And what kind of questions is it not suited for? It's a general question.
Yeah, because it's a network traffic flow model. So it definitely works for the network traffic flows when we want to analyze the network condition for the traffic, the area we want to assess.
But does it work for heterogeneous traffic, for example? Does it work well? You're applying it to bike users, right? Is it the network you're considering? Is it separate from the road network, or do they merge? Do they interact?
Yeah, because this research is basically just test whether the Bathtub model is workable for a network that we assigned for. Because as I mentioned, the blue bikes gives a complete data set. Like if we want to track of the private cars, like the road condition, it's kind of hard to track all the cars in the system. But the bikes we can track all of the bikes in the system, so it's the complete network.
So what kind of questions are you able to answer? I mean, when you build a model, right, you have a question in mind.
Yeah, maybe I can comment on this. Can I?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, definitely. As Jingnan mentioned, this is network level model. Then naturally can use to answer many network level problems related to management, related to planning, related to operation. Actually, when Vincre developed this model back in 1991, this is just the first section. We set up the model. Eventually, we wanted to answer the congestion pricing problem, and how to design the network level pricing. But that is time dependent. Yeah.
But you don't have any users yet. Everybody's the same, right?
Yeah. So this will be useful for network level, like order level pricing, maybe not for level pricing. For example, this is what the New York City is going to implement. When you are entering, the midtown, midtown downtown, New York City, Manhattan area, then you have to pay certain fee. And these and then there are other possibility, even at the planning level, for example. You mentioned, I think you mentioned the multimodal. This model generally naturally can be to look at the multimodal network as separate bedtubs. Use a bike bedtub. We can also have car bedtub, of course.
They would interact.
Interact. How to get the interaction? That's that would be the traditional research.
Like a small question related to the pricing. Like you probably first need to you think to find that okay, this city or this network should be implemented to the with the projection pricing, but maybe that the Bathtub model cannot analyze the whether or not should be price with a one row section or something like that.
No, not at the speed level. I mean, this would be the whole zone level price. Theoretically.
But how to design the network, like whether or not this network is part of the network analyze the population model.
But generally, I mean, for example, downtown Manhattan area, that is the most congested area, and they share similar congestion pattern. Then naturally, they can be clustered together in one zone.
Or maybe that
I think Mike had a question.
Explain to me in word, English word. What exactly did you validate? You validated. I understand that it did a log normal distribution for the trip distance distribution. Great, but what aspect of the Bathtub model you said you validated?
It was conservation. What I
Can you show the equation and
Was it ever under question that would not be validated? Like
because the validation part is like the later research part. Like I have the variable and I'm doing the coding part right now for the validation to show up. Like all the variables are kind of find it for this one. This is
You say log normal. If it is not log normal, then it is generalized Bathtub model. Like that not being log normal, how does it imply in generalized Bathtub model? Not being log normal doesn't mean it is.
or you want to ask them why you want to validate that with the
Not being one model doesn't mean it is another model. Right? So that's like in that she says like because p value is greater than 0.05, it's probably not log normal, distribution. But then say that's why we use like Bathtub model. That doesn't imply this.
So yeah, let me rephrase. So Ronnie's question is not being log normal, does it means we have to use generalized Bathtub model? Can we use other type of Bathtub model if it's not log normal?
Yeah, kind of. It's not log normal.
Yeah,
it's not normal. It is log normal, but it's not based on the assumption we assume that the distribution will be a negative exponential and time independent for the Wickery's Bathtub model. but the result shows that this is a log normal, so we can't use the Vickrey's Bathtub model. Is that answer your question?
So use generalized.
Yeah.
So the generalized could cover all the distribution.
Yeah. Besides if it's just the if sentences, if it's a negative exponential and time independent, we'll use Vickrey's Bathtub model, or we'll use generalized Bathtub.
The only two are the only option, so it's not.
Yeah.
I saw Professor J leave a comment in the chat. Professor J, do you want to unmute yourself?
Sorry, it came down with something today. Yeah, my comment was simply that I think as I was typing it, Professor Jin mentioned this too. There are different layers there, and bike is one layer of Bathtub that is layered over the auto network, for instance. Is this the first case of something other than the auto layer that we have looked at from data for a Bathtub model? We haven't looked at transit data, have we? I don't know. I was just asking.
Who are you asking?
Well, either the speaker or Professor Jin can answer.
That was a question for Wenlong. What is the question?
Yeah, well, is this the first case of a layer other than the auto network layer that we have looked at for a Bathtub model?
This is the first network we are testing. We are doing calibration, and this is related to Mike's question. Jingnan, answered that pretty well. Basically, to validate, to see, whether Vickrey's Bathtub model is valid. And
okay, so
conservations of trips, conservation of trip miles are actually valid or not.
Well, valid, I mean,
but you have,
because we need to calculate the variables in the real data. In theory, it should be valid.
Yeah. I mean, it's more how useful it is to the rest.
Yeah, I know. Validation could be a little vague here, but for example, Vickrey's, definitely Vickrey's Bathtub model is not valid.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, we have looked at the auto network layer already, right? Or we haven't looked at data like this because we didn't have 100% data.
Yeah, exactly. Because here we have a very large market penetration rate of the funds in the whole network. But in the car network, I'm not aware of really large market penetration rate.
Well, 100% data may not be available other than maybe from Singapore, from their studies, maybe. But
even floating car or even Google or Apple, they have a lot of data.
Yes.
When we get to one city, the market penetration rate. I think I talked to some companies.
Yes, I remember. Yeah. Would sample data just not be useful? Do we need 100% data? I mean, it's the reason why I mentioned that is because we had a research discussion, Professor Recker and I, with Kotaro yesterday, where Kotaro has brought some data from Japan, which is a high sample data, not 100% of car travel, hour by hour into various parts of a town in Japan. So this just came to mind whether a sample data would be enough to look at it. So yeah, that may be something that we can talk to Kotaro about too. So anyway, let's move on.
The very first effort that we try to calibrate and validate the model for the whole Bathtub.
That's great. That's great.
So we're watching the clock. I thought about how I'm going to have a soft wrap up of the event right now. Okay. And this is a new series for us. Kind of a new format. I would like to give some thanks, and then I'm going to show you all here's what we're gonna do. Give you 30 seconds and then you have a decision to make. Thank you all to our virtual audience as well. So we have a few more speakers than we have got to so far. But we respect your time and we want you to know that when you go to next school, we will go through that, right? So I've spoken with our last two speakers and here's what we'd like to do. For those of you who have a minute, and we would so appreciate it because there's so much value for the student, they're going to give an abbreviated version of their presentation. And they would like some comments so that they can come back to our next session for the second half of this event and the second half of this series and present again. So I'm going to thank everyone very much. I'm going to thank the students. I'm going to thank all of the grad students in particular. If we can pop up that last slide real quick to show the grad made a special effort to prepare our students today. I think you can see they were incredibly well prepared. We have 5 students. That's the very last slide. There you go. I won't read everybody, but they're in the room. They stepped up. They spent time with our students reviewing their slides. They spent late nights with them, helping them with questions and answers. And I'd like to personally thank them very much. I'd like to thank the faculty who are in the room. Jay, who made a big effort to come in despite not feeling great. He joined us virtually, Professor Richie as well. Thank you all for your support. I want to thank you very much. And both Mikes, Professor Mike Island, Professor Mike McNally, and I'd like to encourage the undergraduates and say this is just the beginning of what what your academic and perhaps professional career could be in research. You can see how engaged, you can see how I think we could have spoken another hour about your research, and that really speaks to how important what you're doing is, how well you did your work, how well you presented. I want to give a shout out to Jingnan in particular for thinking on her feet so quickly. That was very complicated and we were all on the edge of our seats to see how she was going to handle it. She handled it incredibly well, as did our other speakers. So I'm going to let you guys, those of you who go, those of you who stay, greatly appreciate it, and see you at our next event. Thank you. Look at you, you're not touching up. Thank you so much. Sincerely, it's not unnoticed. I'm gonna do this without you guys. So we're gonna let our last two speakers come up and give their things. I know Professor Sizemore has a hard stop at 1:45. He has someone else. One more speaker. We have 2 actually. You are right.
What if we take a group picture first and then continue? If there's one to.
Whatever you. I've been taking pictures of the crowd too, so you have those. But if you'd like the group picture, I defer to what's important to the group. And they're not going anywhere, so maybe we're okay.
Yeah, but maybe probably we could do.
What do you guys?
I do have a class of one.
Or do you guys?
Oh, you have a class of one. Yes.
I think we should just keep going. Okay. See, wait, what's something with you? I got pictures of the crowd. Can we keep going?
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
so, you're right.